Now there are other ways to focus the camera, such as in live view. We can even use a smartphone through an app to do it through Wi-Fi. But this is the core feature of a DSLR camera, is looking through the viewfinder and focusing. You're going to be using it a lot for portraits and sports, things of that nature. Now the focusing systems are a bit of a confusion minefield that as a beginner, if you take the wrong step, it's going to be really frustrating and hard. And I've broken this down into 3 easy concepts, if I can hold my fingers upright, is the how, the when, and the where the camera is focusing. How, when, and where. And if you can memorize these 3 keys, it's going to be cake. How the camera focuses is when we push the shutter button halfway down. Anytime you do this, it's going to engage the camera's focusing systems. Pretty straightforward. Now, when the camera is focusing is determined by the focusing modes. There's 3 of them: one shot, AI focus, and AI servo. Now the way we change our focus modes is pretty straightforward. There's a button on the top of our camera that says AF. We just push it, and then we can rotate our primary selector. Simple as that. You can also change it through the Q mode on the back monitor using the touch screen. One shot means that when we push the shutter button halfway down, the camera will get focus lock. It's ideal for non-moving subjects such as people or landscapes, things of that nature. And when we get a focusing lock, so if we were to do this, we would see a green circle light up in the bottom right-hand part of our viewfinder. As long as we keep our shutter button halfway down and we can move the camera around, the focus will not change. Now this is a very important skill that I'll be covering in the portrait crash course called Recomposing. That means that we get a focus lock on our subject and we move the camera to make the subject more aesthetically pleasing. It's a very, very important skill set to practice. Focus lock, move the camera, take the picture. AI servo is a predictive focus, and what this means is that the camera will focus over and over and over again continually. It does not stop. The camera in this mode essentially is trying to predict where a moving subject will be, and it will not get focus lock. If you are shooting kids running around or fast-moving sports subjects, birds flying, animals moving quickly, you are going to want to shoot on AI servo. Now I took this out and I tested it. The Canon 70D has some of the highest rated focusing systems that I've personally tested, all in the 90s. So those cross-type focusing squares are very accurate, very good. Combined with the burst rate, it's a wonderful sports camera. Now, the AI focus mode is a combination of the first 2. We're essentially surrendering permission to the camera and let it decide when it wants to use one shot or when it wants to use AI servo. I used it all the time when I shot weddings or events, because sometimes you might have a bride who's walking and then she stops and then she's walking again and then she's throwing a bouquet and then she's cutting cake and now she's dancing. So for subjects that are moving and starting and stopping, AI focus is the way to go. What I recommend for beginners, if you're just getting started, start off with AI focus. So part 3 is the where the camera is focusing, or using our camera's focusing squares. If you don't have your camera, get it in your hands right now so you can follow along, and I'll try to make this as easy as I can. Go ahead and look through the viewfinder and just feel with your finger where there's this little button just behind and to the left of the shutter button. That is our autofocus area selector. And if you push it, you're going to see 3 symbols light up on the top of our camera. Go ahead and push it, and you should notice how the focusing squares are changing. The one on the far left is a single focusing square, and when we have this selected, we will only have 1 focusing square active. The second one is 9 focusing squares, and the last one is the auto area. This essentially gives permission to the camera to focus on the closest subject to you. The truth of the matter is, I never use it. 95% of the time, I'm using 1 square. The other 5%, if I'm shooting close sports subjects, I might use the 9 square option. If you are a pure beginner, I would recommend just sticking with that single focusing square for now. Now, once you've used the cluster selector, we can use our directional pad and select squares that way. But the truth of the matter is that if the camera rests for just a few seconds, this will be locked and you won't be able to change your focusing squares without pushing this top right-hand thumb button. So if you're shooting and you want to change your focusing square, the correct way to do it, or at least the default way to do it, is to push this outside thumb button and then change your focusing square. So you can see that the squares light up and I can move the main focusing square wherever I want. Okay. Now what I recommend, instead of leaving it on the default, is to press your Q button, go into your custom button setup, go to the very last option on the bottom right hand corner, and turn that from off to AF point selection direct. And what this does is it allows you to skip using this outside right thumb button. Now when you're focusing, you can just move those squares wherever you want. If the camera locks up, which it will after a few seconds, it's like an auto shut off, just tap the shutter button and then you're good to go. You should be able to move it around. Okay, very important tip. Another customization that I want you to turn on right now is in our orange tab. It's custom function 2, item number 10. I want you guys to turn that one on. What this setting is going to allow us to do is to go from the extreme far sides to the other without needing to go through the middle. And you can see me going back and forth here. It's a lot quicker. So we've talked about the how, we've talked about the when, and we've talked about the where. Practice moving your focusing squares around. Practice getting a focusing lock on one shot and recomposing. One last side note I would like to make is about something called back button focus. It's more of an advanced technique. I don't recommend it for pure beginners simply because you guys have a lot on your plates already. But if you're a sports shooter, this is something you're going to want to look into. Back button focus removes the focusing mechanism from the shutter button to the AF on button in the back, on the back of the camera. And so what this allows photographers to do is essentially engage focus with their thumb and then take the picture whenever they want. Separating the focus and taking the shot from this one button simplifies things, especially for sports shooting. A lot of it is a preference. I'll be talking about how to set it up in the menu systems a little bit later. But that is your crash course on the Canon 7D's optical focusing systems, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you found this video helpful, you may be interested in my new Canon 70D crash course. I'll teach you the basics and show you how to shoot like a pro in no time. You can order it from the following link.